Why wasn't GTA 4 ever remastered? Or at the very least receive a port for the newer generations, and at this point older generation consoles like the PS4 and the Xbox One. A little while back, the community celebrated GTA 4's 16th anniversary, unlike Rockstar, who has never acknowledged any of them. Yes, not even its 10th one. Which for older GTAs always meant a new port or even remasters. And it wasn't even just older GTAs that got this special treatment. Even other IPs like Bully got remastered and ported over to newer generations upon its 10th anniversary. So why wasn't it the same case for GTA 4? I mean, its younger brother, GTA 5, has been notoriously ported over to every single console generation since the PS3 and Xbox 360, and always receiving improved graphics and even additional features like the first-person mode, which wasn't a thing back on the original release. So it's not like Rockstar wasn't interested in re-releasing their games with every single chance they get. However, they've been quite inconsistent with them so far. Let's take both of the Red Dead Redemption games for example. Red Dead 1, which for the longest of time was stuck on ancient hardware, was only ported to newer consoles 13 years after release to the Switch, as well as the PS4 and 5 thanks to backwards compatibility. But the PS5 version was still stuck on 30 FPS, which wasn't fixed until a bit after the initial release. And what's even crazier is that leaked information from Epic Games' launcher revealed a possible PC port as well for Red Dead 1, codenamed Semla, which is a Swedish pastry. Quite strange if you ask me. But what I'm trying to get at here is that Rockstar's history with ports and remasters has been quite inconsistent. One game gets ported as soon as possible to literally every platform imaginable, like GTA 5, although considering it's the second best-selling game of all time, I understand why that was the case from a business perspective. You then had something like RDR1, which for the longest of time was doomed to remain forever stuck on ancient consoles until it wasn't on a random Tuesday over a decade later. You also have its sequel, which also sold quite decently at over 60 million copies, which to this day, nearly 6 years later, hasn't even gotten a simple 60 FPS patch for new-gen consoles. And the star of today's video, GTA 4, which although received a PC port on the same year it initially released for consoles, it was never brought to anything else, and neither was it ever remastered. Nearly all of the prior Grand Theft Auto games that were part of the 3D era were remastered and ported to the mobile for their respective 10th anniversaries. And as part of GTA 3's 20th anniversary, we received the Definitive Edition disaster. And even though it received multiple patches, most fans still don't consider them to be faithful to the originals. So we're talking about two separate remasters that were done for these games, with the exceptions being Liberty City Stories, which wasn't remastered a second time, but it did get its 10th anniversary one back in 2015, and Vice City Stories, which didn't receive any remaster at all. However, it was more understandable why that wasn't the case for it, and if you're curious for a more in-depth analysis of why VCS never got remastered, check out this video I've done a few months ago. Rumors surrounding both GTA 4 and Red Dead Redemption 1 remasters have surfaced the internet more than once in the past few years, with Rockstar supposedly planning to make and release them at some point after the trilogy games. And the same rumors suggest that because of the backlash and poor reception of the definitive trilogy, Rockstar changed their minds about remastering GTA 4 and RDR1. And if they were planning on remastering them the same way they did the definitive editions, well then yeah, it was a good decision not to follow through with that plan. And as a side note, I feel like people initially bashed the Grove Street Games studio too much, and they still do to this day. And I find that to be quite unfair, as they were given a very short amount of time to remaster not one, not two, but 3 whole games. And they're not even equal in length and size. I mean, remastering GTA San Andreas couldn't have realistically taken the same amount of time as GTA 3 did. We're talking about a game that has 2 more cities and double the story length. So forcing them to equally spend the same amount of time on each game, and then expect for them all to be perfect on release date, was a recipe for disaster from the very beginning. They also didn't have access to Rockstar's very own game engine and had to use Unreal Engine 4 instead. Although people have mentioned that the developers at GSG were more familiar with the engine and having to learn how Rage works would have taken them a long amount of time, further delaying the trilogy project. But I don't see the negative side of that, to be honest. I'll always happily take delays if it means I'll receive a finished and polished product, which gaming companies in general have been trending less and less towards. Not to mention that them learning how to use Rage would have made working on GTA 4 and RDR1 remasters much easier. So in the end, I think if you're gonna blame anyone for the disaster of the trilogy, it's Rockstar themselves, because they outsourced the project, gave a really tight deadline for the release, and didn't even help the GSG team at all. Now, because of these definitive editions, it wasn't just Rockstar that decided to stop the development of other possible remasters in the future. There was also the fans that actually played their games, which thought it would be best to just not make any other remasters, fearing that they might end up as butchered as the ones we already have. And again, it's understandable why fans feel that way. I wouldn't want a GTA 4 remaster neither, if it was even half as bad as the initial release of DE. And the same goes for RDR1 as well, of course. Right now, Rockstar is clearly very busy with a small indie game called Grand Theft Auto 6. Bad joke, I know. Which is said to be the biggest and most immersive game in the franchise, according to their own statements they've made. It's also clearly the most anticipated game of the next year, and possibly of this entire decade, with expectations going through the roof. And some of those are justified and understandable, like more accessible interiors, improved gunplay, which I've also talked about on the channel before, more side activities, and a better structured map, which appears to be that way just from the latest version of the VI mapping project, and so many more things. While others are expecting perhaps too much from the game, with wishlists containing more features and mechanics than I can possibly count. But again, I understand the excitement behind that as well. And with the release date for the game being just over a year from now, unless further delays happen, which are totally fine, just let them cook, Rockstar has most likely entered the all hands on deck state for all of their studios. So there's virtually next to no one left to work on something as ambitious as a remaster for even one of their most beloved games ever made. So it's safe to assume that we won't see anything outside of a few small updates for GTA Online, which makes me sad, until after GTA 6 finally hits the shelves. I've mentioned in the beginning that Rockstar never acknowledged any of GTA 4's anniversaries thus far, and while a fully fledged port of the game for the mobile probably wasn't realistic for back in 2018, we didn't even see a simple tweet or newswire post celebrating the 10th anniversary from them, which is very strange to me. Although not very interesting, at least GTA 5 did receive a newswire post and a small update for online that gave us the basic outfits of Trevor, Michael, and Franklin. It wasn't much, but at least the thought was there. And it's not like they wanted to sweep the game under the rug either. It is to this day the third best video game of all time according to Meta Critic, and that has to mean something. Plus, a good chunk of the fans consider it to be number 1 above other games like Vice City, San Andreas, and even GTA 5. And let's not forget that this game had 2 whole DLCs that expanded upon the main story from the perspective of 2 new protagonists, Johnny Klebitz and Luis Lopez. Developing a remastered version of the whole Liberty City trilogy wouldn't have taken as long as developing the 3D era trilogy, as working on GTA 4 alone would mean that over 90% of the work required for the DLCs would have been done, because they use the exact same map with just a few small changes and a few extra cars and weapons as well. Realistically, we could expect Rockstar to make a definitive edition of the HD trilogy at some point, maybe for GTA 4's 20th anniversary, which would include GTA 4 and the episodes 5 and GTA 6. Although we're looking at over 300 gigs of content, maybe even more than that depending on the size of GTA 6 at launch. So I wouldn't give up all hopes on a potential remaster of GTA 4, but I also wouldn't expect to see it very soon. Unless Rockstar just randomly decides to announce it next Tuesday, just like they did for RDR1 last year. So no one can really know for certain. But what do you think? Is Rockstar gonna magically release a remaster of GTA 4 or perhaps RDR1 anytime soon? Or have they completely forgotten about it? Let me know in the comment section down below. And while you're there, also leave a like. And of course, consider subscribing if you want to see more. Thank you so much for watching.